Welcome back to another episode of Scary Stories from the Internet, where I read creepypastas from the Internet. So grab your tissues and get ready, because this one hurts. The first story is titled, My Family Was Abducted When I Was a Child, and it goes, It's me. I don't want to be anonymous, since my family was involved in this. So here's some backstory. When I was 6 years old, we lived in a small town in Southern California. My dad worked for the sheriff's department and had been transferred from an office job to a patrol position. He was very fit and even did bodybuilding competitions on the side. My mom was very sweet and a homemaker. We also had a boxer named Bruno, who was basically like a Saint Bernard. He was huge and slobbery, but harmless. Well, back then, my parents were having problems with some local gang members who kept taunting us and trying to break into our house. They would always drive by slowly in their lowriders and yell out threats to my dad, or throw bottles at our house when they saw him outside. But we never really thought much of it, until one day when it happened while we were inside the house. I remember playing Monopoly with my parents in our living room while watching TV. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from outside. We all looked over to the window to see a bottle that was aimed right at my head. It rolled off the windowsill and fell on the floor next to me. I started crying, and then my dad said he was going to go check it out. I didn't want him to leave, so I got up from my chair and went to the front door to watch him. As he opened the door, I could hear his voice getting louder and angrier, and I was so scared. Then I heard Bruno growl and bark for the first time, and after that, everything went silent. I remember running to my mom and hiding under her skirt, while she held me and rocked me back and forth. She was whispering things to calm me down, but I couldn't hear what she was saying because my ears were completely blocked, like I couldn't even hear myself scream. After a few minutes, my dad came back inside with a big gash on his arm, which was bleeding everywhere. He tried to be strong in front of us, but I saw him wince in pain. Then he went into the bathroom to clean himself up, while my mom called the police. I remember thinking that maybe it was my fault. Maybe if I hadn't yelled at the guys outside, they wouldn't have thrown the bottle at us. That's what kids do, right? I remember hating myself for what felt like forever. The cops never caught the guys who threw the bottle. And after that, my dad became even more paranoid. He installed cameras all around the house and made sure that every single window was locked at all times. He would do walkthroughs at night to make sure that we were safe, and he even carried a gun at all times. And my mom hated that because she didn't want him to be in danger. Then one night it happened again. Around 3 a.m., my dad was awoken by footsteps on the roof. He immediately grabbed his gun and went to check it out. At first he couldn't find anything, but then he saw a hole in the ceiling where the moonlight was shining through. Well, he waited a few minutes, and then two figures started crawling through the hole. He screamed for my mum and told her to call the cops, but she was too afraid to move because she was certain that they were gone. Nah, come after her next. So now my dad is standing by the doorway with a gun aimed at the opening and yells, "Get away from my family or I'll shoot." But instead of leaving, the guy that was closest to him stepped forward and raised his hands and said, "Don't shoot. Please, man. All I want is your daughter. Please let me take her." My dad asked him what the hell he was talking about, and that's when the second guy showed himself. And this guy was carrying a syringe filled with a clear liquid. The guy without the syringe then said, "Look, just give me the little girl, and no one has to get hurt. You won't even feel it, I promise." And then he motioned towards the syringe. "This is just a sedative. She'll be fine. Just hand her over, and let's end this peacefully." My dad was yelling at him, asking him why he wanted me, but he never answered. Then he took a step closer to the opening, and my dad shot him in the shoulder. Both of them screamed, and that's when they ran away. Dad immediately called the cops and explained what happened. Then he stayed awake the rest of the night in case they came back. In the morning, the cops came to our house to ask my dad more questions, but all he could tell them was that one of the guys was Hispanic and the other one was white. And that's all they got. No one ever found out who these guys were. And that est, when my dad decided that he was gone, wait around to find out if they were coming back. So he bought my mom and I plane tickets back to my grandparents' house in Nebraska. We left that same day, and my dad drove us to the airport. When we got to the security line, I remember hugging my dad goodbye, and I remember him being unusually quiet. He didn't say anything. He just hugged me back. Then he walked away. I knew something was wrong, but I was too scared to ask. We got on the plane and sat in complete silence. I was so scared that I started crying. And that's when my mom told me that we had to be strong because Dad was protecting us. And that's when I finally stopped crying. Because I thought to myself, Dad's a cop. He can protect himself. But when we landed in Nebraska, my uncle picked us up and told my grandparents that my dad did show up to drop us off. My grandma immediately called the police, and when they got to our house, they found out that the screen door was kicked in and my dad was gone. They also found signs that someone had ransacked the place. And that's when the cops told my family that my dad was probably dead. They put out a missing person report. But to this day, no one knows what happened to him. They never found his body or his car. And they never found any trace of the guys who broke into our house. The last place he was seen was on a traffic camera driving west on the freeway, and he hasn't been seen since. I recently moved back to California to start a new job, and I haven't told anyone about what happened until now, because I was too scared. But I still think about my dad every day. I wonder if those guys kidnapped him, or if he is still out there somewhere trying to find us. I hope that wherever he is, he's safe. The uploader adds, "Those guys will be the death of me. I know it. I can feel it in my bones." That was Scary Stories from the Internet. And if you like this content, check out my podcast, where I publish the exact same episodes. Also hit that subscribe button, because I put out new videos every single day. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.